All right. Hello and welcome to the second episode of the League of Record podcast. I am the man with more sackos than playoff berths, Ryan Ginsmuller. I am here to talk all things LOR today with the man that you know all too well, whose team you see and you shiver. This is Justin Pearlman. What's up, man? How you doing?
Sorry, I had to do one. I'm not going to
Fucking
do this.
Thanos
I
asshole.
think, you know what? I'm doing great. This is awesome. This league rocks, and this is terrific. I think this is the second episode of what will be a really tremendous series of podcasts. I'm really excited.
We'll see. It hasn't gotten canceled yet. I would guess Spot would be doing the canceling. But before we begin, told you there was a bit of a something coming.
Uh-huh.
This got sent to me and not to you yet. I wanted
Oh,
you to at least see it as long as we were doing this. I know you have the other ring in your house back there
terrific.
somewhere, but we
It's
have
beautiful.
the guy
Oh,
here.
it's
I'll
beautiful.
I'll be mailing this to you or hopefully seeing you soon and
Me and the Dangerous Knights crew. Incredible.
slop those steaks. So that
Beauty.
I needed you to see it while we were on this
Slop them
podcast.
up.
I'm sure everybody else was upset to see that.
Oh,
Um, but let's
natural
run through.
order to things.
Fuck you. Let's run through a few questions. A few of them are kind of standard episode to
Sure.
episode, like I said. Just trying to figure out, not like I need to figure out where you're at with your dynasty team. You're at the fucking top and you're reveling in it. But just to get some perspective and the man behind the Thanos curtain that
Sure.
is your dynasty team. So, the first question I have from you, uh, it's just like my between two ferns question.
Mm,
Um, do you attribute your resounding success in this league to brilliant, intelligent, and forward-thinking roster management, or to lucking into the 101 in a video game simulation and grabbing the best fantasy player in history?
that. I think it's that. Um, it doesn't hurt to have the guy that scored, the most points in fantasy by a pretty healthy margin. So that helps. Looked a little dicey there in that first year because he was coming off an injury and didn't really play a whole lot in that first year. Scraped my way into the playoffs, but it was looking a little dicey. But lo and behold, here we are.
I
Uh,
feel like I recall Lamar got hurt that year too. Like you
I
had
honestly
like
haven't the faintest idea how I made the playoffs that first year. I think I kind of limped in. But the bones were there. A really hilarious exercise though is to go back and look at my startup draft because
mm,
it's a little rough. It's a little rough.
we all have ones we want back in that one.
Yeah, it's a little rough.
A
Oh no,
whole
I wouldn't
lot.
change anything. I wouldn't change anything. My rough players are just gone.
That's how
They're
that
just
works.
they're just not on my team
They
anymore.
get Trey Lance punted right off the
Oh,
roster.
oh God.
Uh, okay, so you know your team well. I don't need to like pull it up on a screen here.
Mhm.
I know, and this almost seems like a silly question to ask a team like yours, but like if you actually had to pick a positional strength or a player of strength or something like that, let's say outside of CMC, because that's just a
Mhm.
fucking cheat code, as we've said. What do you view, just holistically speaking? I know this isn't your only dynasty team, so like dynasty. What is this team's like biggest strength? Where is this the strongest, or like you're the proudest of the build? Like what part is it?
Um, well, we talk a lot about it. Like it's really tough trying to really commit to both, like to having your cake and eating it too, which is like really, I'm really desperate to do that because obviously I'm firmly in my window. Things are going great, but I don't want to get to a point where like McCaffrey has an off year, he's down now, and now all of a sudden I can't compete. So trying to balance the guys that are a year or two away from the decline with guys that are a little bit on the more up. So trying to get that balance, and I'm pretty happy with that. I think I got some good guys. Zay was nice. It was a nice little find there. And with a little trading, I'm glad I got a couple of trades done. So I got a little more youth in the running back room. I got a little more youth in the wide receiver room. One strength. I think it's probably still my receiver group. And a lot's going to hinge on Olave kind of being the guy we thought he was, and we think he is, and we do. But making the trade to move Smith was definitely a little bit of a gamble because I think he's a guy that you kind of know what his role is, and we've seen the flashes of talent. We kind of know what's up with him. And moving on from him is a little scary. And it also means I'm sort of committing to filling my flex spot from like a mix of Mixon and Connor and guys who are like a little closer to that farther end of their career.
Zach
Um,
Moss, yeah.
Zach, well, Zach Moss,
I
the holy man himself. Zach Moss, for those of you who are unaware, is my only universally owned dynasty share. All of my dynasty teams have a Zach Moss share, and I'm very proud of that. And I hope he doesn't suck because he might. He might suck.
he might suck,
He
yeah.
might suck. He might suck. Chase
I,
Brown breathing heavily down his neck.
Very much so. I've told you before I have Moss as well in a dynasty where my running back core is very, very light. So like
Hmm.
I essentially need him to be like an RB2 this year. You don't have to rely on that. You kind of
No,
just, to your
but it would be
point, can have,
nice.
well, sure. If he falls in the end zone 10 times,
That would be helpful.
whatever Mixon did last year.
That would be
Um,
helpful.
you basically led into though two of the questions that I have. So I'll start with the mention of Devonta Smith, and that's the only trade. A lot of people have been trading, doing a lot of wheeling and dealing this offseason. You've done precisely one move, and it was that one. Um, and you mentioned the risk that it does put more reliance on the guys like Olave and Zay Jones, but like, was there one specific reason? I know there's a lot of reasons you do a trade, right? Was there something that stuck out that like sort of resulted in you going in that direction and being able to be like, okay, I think I can shed this guy and still be in a championship position? And like, what am I getting back like for that
Mhm.
guy? How I feel about the value? Just talk about like your thought process
Yeah.
on the trade.
Um, well, going into the offseason, I had kind of not made a deal with myself, but I had sort of decided I was okay moving one of those guys once we were past like the absolute top. So like the McCaffreys and the Hills, I really want to get the three. I want to get three championships. That's it. I'm not trying to say I don't want more, but it's important to me. So I didn't want to mess with like the real core. And beyond that, there's a bunch of guys that I feel really strongly about that have huge high ceilings that are going to have some variance in their production for whatever reason. Maybe they're in a wide receiver room with other really talented players. Maybe they haven't really gotten that breakout yet. Maybe the volume is just always going to be inconsistent. Maybe the offense is a little like someone like Zay. He's somebody who's going to get a good bulk of the target share, but this is an offense run by Lamar Jackson. Like there's going to be a lot of variance in how many attempts are going to be even going his way. So that's something I looked at all of these players. I like Smith a lot. He might be skinnier than you, which is saying something. He is a lanky little man.
Sure is.
And so durability is something I've always been concerned about with him. Not to wish any ill on our good friend Chris. Uh, and it hasn't really happened for him. He hasn't been really banged up, but it's still something that's in the back of my mind. But it
Mhm.
wasn't so much moving off of him. I love him as a player. I like his situation. Even with Brown there, I think that's actually good for him. And if they can if that offense kind of figures things out, like they were a little iffy at the end of the season, but if they figure it out, and I think they will, there's a lot of upside for him as a player. My big thing was I wanted to preserve my future. So I threw everything we had done over the last couple of years, like making that Gibbs trade in the midseason. I gave up a couple more first round picks in addition to White. So it's like I'm looking at my future assets and it's like nothing there. Um, and I'm on record as saying anything after a first round pick isn't really worth a whole lot to me, which is a little questionable. There's some good stuff in the second round. I think Sam Laporta probably would yell at me, but
Yeah.
I looked at that deal and where Chris and I were able to end up, and I got a player that I think is a big step away from where he wants to be, and where I think he can be in Smith and Jigba, but I think he's a guy that's like primed for a good spot. Like he may be undervalued. He came out of that year. I don't think he did anything really all that wrong. There just wasn't a lot of value. And he's playing behind two established, very talented receivers in an offense helmed by Geno Smith. Like there's a lot of, and that's no disrespect on Geno Smith. He played
Yeah.
well. But there's a lot of factors going into why he maybe had an underwhelming rookie year. And that's a guy I don't mind buying. And to be able
Mhm.
to get that first round pick and replenish the war chest a little bit. So now I look at my upcoming assets and I have no first in 26 and otherwise I'm fully loaded. I'm back to normal. And that's kind of where I want to be because I'm not like letting myself get caught up in win now, win now, win now. I want to make sure I'm still going to be successful down the road.
Yeah, it's not a fuck them picks situation. It's
No,
more
I
of
know. I
just
don't. I mean,
yeah.
I do believe in fuck them picks, but I believe in fuck them picks to get to where I am now. And now we're trying to just balance, right? We're like Simone on the balance bar right now.
Didn't
Trying
she
to
fall
not
today
she
though?
did
That's
fall today.
not
She fall.
that's
We were actually watching that right now. She was falling right now. We're like the two girls who didn't fall today. I don't know who they
yeah.
are.
Sorry,
They're
did you just doom your own fantasy team? It's like just
maybe.
like Biles who just fell
What I meant
down.
to say is we're like Biles on the vault. where
Okay,
our
that's
starting score is so high that no one can catch us, even if we fuck up. That's what I meant to say.
she's like so stupidly good.
So stupidly good.
So one quick follow-up on the Devonta Smith deal. Now, of course, you're going to do something always that's better for your team. Like if you can make your team better after one trade, obviously that's all fine and good. Chris, obviously, very loudly announcing himself as a contender this year. Did a thought go through your mind like, okay, this dude went and acquired Brees Hall and Kyler Murray and Malik
Legit.
Neighbors, all this shit this year. Am I
Absolutely legit.
handing him another piece that like, oh, this guy might be able to fuck with me in the next year or two?
No.
I'm just so terrible. A terrible
His team's
person.
legit. His team is legit.
Yeah.
And listen, we could be sitting here 4 months from now and he could have just toppled me, and it could happen. That's part of the game. But I'm making the moves. That move in particular was not made to make my team better right now. And
Yeah.
so there's an element of like you got to swallow how that might improve your competitors' teams if that's going to give you the best net positive for your team. It's like people don't want to trade with me now. And I understand that, like we get to the midseason, it's going to be a little tough for me to get deals done because at the end of the day, they're helping me do something they don't want me to do. And so I understand that. And I don't blame, that's totally legit management,
Mm.
right? But you got to believe in your roster. And I ultimately gave up somebody who was a fringe starter for me, who will 100% be a starter for him. And that's totally fine. But I feel like at the end of the day, I got a little more value. And that's all I could really go based on. His team is good, very, very good. I think Rashad White is fool's gold, but I told him that then, and that's why he got 2 first-round picks too. So again, could be wrong, and I wish him all the best. And he's got a good squad, and the moves he's made should be absolutely applauded because they're legit. Um, but I'm making moves for my team, not for his team.
Yeah. You described, by the way, the end of a Settlers of Catan game. You're not true. You don't
It's
trade
true.
with the guy that's
It's
got
true.
eight or nine victory points.
It's true.
So you touched a little bit on it. Is the biggest concern that you have? I know you don't. I know you're not really
Always have
concerned about this
concerns.
team.
Not at all.
Uh, what is your biggest concern on this team, and why is it the old ass age of your running back room? Um,
Well,
I
it
mean,
is.
your
It
running
is.
backs are like as old as like a
It
U.S.
is.
presidential candidate,
It
right?
is. I mean, I'm rostering running backs that are over 26, which we all know is a felony in at least 9 states.
Sure would be on my dynasty team. It
I
couldn't be
know.
me.
I understand. But, one of those running backs is, overall player number one for the last couple of seasons. And I'm going to live with him being 28. I think he's got the kind of game that'll translate to a couple more years of relevance. He can maybe hopefully get the usage down a little bit, but still maintain the high efficiency for him. So I think that we're okay for McCaffrey. Age is always going to be a thing, and health is always going to be a concern, right? So when you base your entire team around somebody like Lamar Jackson, you are inherently taking on risk. And we've seen it from him when he's healthy. He is the top of that position. And when he's anything else, he's very underwhelming. Because as a passer, if he's a little bit hobbled, you start to see the holes in his game as a passer. And it translates to some pretty poor fantasy scores. Um, I think I've done an okay job trying to cover that. So like as much as my running back room is older, there's a bunch of guys that I think are at least lined up to get some workload. We mentioned Moss. Until he gets hurt, James Conner is exactly what he has always been, which is when he's on the field, very, very useful. Now he could get hurt week 3 because he's old and injury prone, but I'm trying to at least have a few different backup plans in each place. Is it going to be successful? I don't know. I mean, health is going to be an issue. You get older running backs as the efficiency starts to dip and they get a little banged up. We're going to have trouble there. But I think getting a guy like Gibbs is about as much as I could ask for to try and ensure that position. It brought the average age of my running back room to a much more palatable place. Um, but age and health are always going to be an issue. Like Kelsey. Kelsey is way older than he should be to be productive and is coming off of what you have to consider a down year for him. He was only tight end 3 or something like that. Like that's a problem.
Oh,
But
boo hoo, boo
I know.
frickety hoo, right?
Well, boo frickety who is that my backup is still Dalton Schultz, which I know how you feel about that guy. So there's some issues here. If we get another down year from Kelsey and he's just average, that's a massive advantage that I hold. That's going to be down. So there's some health issues, there's some age issues for sure. Kirk Cousins is here and he's here to save all of us. but there's only so much he can do coming off of an Achilles. So,
Kirk
you know,
Cousins is not here to save your dynasty team. He's actually here to save my
well,
dynasty
that's
team.
true. That's true.
But
Yeah,
yeah, the of course the I mean just obviously number one hitting you have to hit on Rashad in the first place, at least
sure.
hit to the extent, of course, even if you and I are not necessarily fans of his rushing
No, I mean, but the production's
efficiency.
there
Yeah, he was a
for
hit
sure.
as a pick.
Absolute best case scenario for that pick.
Yeah, and was that your third round
It was
pick
second
or a
rounder.
second round pick? Yeah.
Second rounder.
Um, and then getting Gibbs, and I knew I had to work this into the podcast. Gibbs at the absolute nadir of his
Nadir. Get
value.
the nadir.
I had to throw that in. Shout out to
The
Scott.
nadir. Shout out Scott is right. The nadir.
So it's not like you, and I say all that to say like you're not like Connor Mixon are not like your RB2. Like you
No,
have a very,
yeah,
very solidified
for
top
sure.
two that are going to be in basically the top 5 to 10 of any redraft rankings for the running
Mhm.
back position. So, you're just, like you said, kind of just a couple bodies in the background.
For sure.
And not everybody has dynasty depth at running back. In fact, almost nobody
Most people
has
don't. Yeah, I
that.
know. I know. I'm definitely starting from a place of power, and I can appreciate that. And we're doing a startup, my home league, as I've talked to you guys about a little bit. My home league, which has traditionally been a keeper league, is transitioning to dynasty, and we're going through the startup mocks. And I'm looking at it, I'm like, I know a lot of these names in the first round, and it's a nice feeling. But it's weird not having them all on my team. I can only get one.
I'm sure you'll swing a trade for Tyreek Hill
Yeah,
and
we'll
Travis
see.
Kelce over there too.
We'll see. We'll see.
Now, last sort of question about where your own team is at. Um, I know that you're not actually legitimately scared of somebody beating you this year, but if you had to pick one team in the league that you look at and you're like, you know what, these guys, I know we talked about Serms earlier.
Hmm.
We're going to talk about another team in a minute. But you look at one team, you're like, okay, this is actually could be a problem for me, even if I am a fully healthy, let's
Hmm.
just assume health across the board. Who
Hmm.
would that team be?
Um, no disrespect to my guy Scott, because I love Scott.
Mhm.
He's a proven, getter to finals, proven champion in this league. So he's up there. I tend to get stuck on Schmitty, and that might be residue from last year because there have definitely been some roster issues over the last, however many months for his team. Pollard, not a great situation right now for him. I don't really know what to think of Cortland Sutton, but like he's got those really high end players that have the ability to just go bananas, and he's set up, I think, for some long term success, which is good. Um, yeah, Jefferson, Kyron Williams, CJ Stroud, Pittman, like this is a good core. Mark Andrews, I think, still has some time. So he's definitely up there. Scott's definitely up there. And I think Serm's got to be up there, right? Like you have top end talent there. They all deserve an honorable mention. I will say that when we were sitting in the playoffs last year, I was like, let's maybe Scott, maybe you beat Schmitty, huh? Maybe you just take him out. Maybe you just knock him out because I don't really want to play that team.
That's interesting. Yeah, well, just like looking at, sort of out the side of your eye, like, yeah, that's exactly my question. Like, who do you not want to face?
Mhm.
Because yeah, if there's a
Last year
few
it was him.
things, yeah,
Candidly, last year it was definitely him.
well, because you don't exactly see coming like he kind of got Kyron like ahead of the Kyron like real stuff,
Hmm.
like at the end of the season where he kind of made a charge. He
Hmm.
pulls CJ Stroud out of his ass, which is pretty massive. So,
Looks so good.
he has obviously he's got some, a Rasheed Rice suspension maybe
Yeah, I
and
mean, there's issues
Austin.
here. To be clear,
Yeah.
there's definitely issues here. Um, but I think he's got the top end talent, at least in the big positions, which definitely gives me pause.
Yeah, that's interesting. Well, the team that you're being assigned to talk about today is not a team that you mentioned just now
Okay.
among the contender circle, but he'd certainly like to be. I'm, of course, talking about myself. We're you, and there's sort of two reasons for this, right? Because
Yeah.
somebody has to review my team, right?
Yes.
I'm doing this, well, essentially for three reasons. Number
All right. All
one,
right.
there's no one better to look at my team than the champion of the league.
Appreciate that.
So I'm
Thank
trying to
you.
get to this hallowed ground. Number two, we talk about my team, and me and you and Scott in our group chat talk
We
about our
do.
teams a lot. But number three, I also believe you're going to provide the requisite amount of shitting on my life over the course of this to make the league happy. So um, we're going to
I
talk
hope.
about Gaines' team today.
Wow. All right. You got prompts or you want my
I
initial thoughts?
I got a few prompts. Let's
All
let's
right.
just start with like I mean, obviously I am doing this for the first time, this
Hmm.
like competing thing, more Sackos
Hmm.
than playoff berths, right? Um, I don't think there's anybody else better to judge like what it takes to like win in this league than somebody who consistently wins in this league. So like I'm not asking for compliments, okay? I want this is like pretend that this is somebody else's. I know you actually wouldn't compliment me if I
I
asked for it anyway.
well,
So
it's gonna
um
be it's gonna be a mix here because you're gonna get some compliments from me because I think that your starting lineup, if the stars align just a little bit, is as good as any team in this league, including mine. I do mean that. There's a lot of potential for erring, for issues, but you have two of the top. You have overall RB1 for Dynasty, and another guy who's easily in the top, what, 6, 7 at worst, if you believe, whatever you feel about ETN. You got a guy who could be wide receiver 1, 2, or 3, depending on your preferences. If you like Pickens, who doesn't run very fast and doesn't separate very well, but has incredibly good hands, the man fucking
great
scores
hands,
points.
just excellent hands.
The man scores points. Nico Collins to me is like I just like don't want to believe, but I kind of have to believe. Like he was just too good and not enough is really changing. Like the rapport is there. Like I kind of have to like believe he's going to be good. I'm a big Jaden Reed guy. You know that we've talked about that. I have a little ownership in one of my other dynasties. Really good dude to own.
Yep.
Um, Pitts is going to be Pitts, and if Pitts, listen, if you get your wish, which is that we have the great Atlanta surge forward under our guy Kirky,
Let's go.
there's a chance that Pitts is this guy is what he's supposed to be. You know what? It was funny. There was a little, I don't know when this will be aired, but there was a little like thing in our chat today about Kyle Pitts rumors, and I actually went on and tried to look at what it was and could not find it. Did you ever see what it was?
Of course I did. I have Kyle Pitts. Like I have like it's like Elon Musk. I have his little Neuralink thing, and
Oh,
every
okay.
time,
What
anytime
what
Kyle Pitts happens somewhere in the universe, it
what
pings
was
me
it?
again.
Was he spotted with your sister?
Oh my God, he was reported to have been at camp and not in the best shape. So we have
Oh dear.
fat Kyle Pitts news, which is why
No.
I posted a GIF of Fat Thor, of course.
Oh my God.
Um,
He's getting the Eddie Lacy
so,
comments.
but
Oh, that's tough.
yeah, we'll see.
That's not what you want. I don't want that either. I got a Pitts
Oh,
share.
I know you do.
I
I
don't
know that's
want
why you
that. I
couldn't
don't
shit on
want
Pitts
that.
that badly.
Well, and you got Jordan Love and AR. And like that's like an ascendant quarterback room. Like I love AR. I think AR he's the dude like is super fun to watch. If he's healthy, like small sample size, but really exciting, exactly what you want from a week in, week out fantasy guy. The floor on the rushing is there. He's in an offense that's already proficient when it comes to running, which is only going to make him more dangerous. Um, there's some good targets there. And Love, I mean, dude, the guy just got the bag. And
Sure
and
did.
we talked about it because it was him and Tua getting the deal at the same day. And it's like kind of feel better about Love. Like it just feels like the stuff that he does is replicable. And we talked about going out of structure and like getting it to guys like Jaden Reed. Like that's an offense that like can improvise and you feel pretty good about him. Like this is I mean, you took an interesting route to get here. You lit $600 on fire before you even had a chance. But this team is good, man.
Well, yes, to your
Team is
point
good.
about Richardson. I mean, you were just talking about your own Lamar Jackson earlier. It's not,
Mhm.
and of course, they're easy comps because they're running QBs,
Sure,
but
of
like
course.
they're also just by their nature very high ceiling,
Yeah.
can be low floor type of
Hmm.
dudes. Because
The
if
injuries,
you
yeah.
get that week, not even well, of course injuries, but like even let's say just like the poor Lamar performance where it's like he doesn't run for or throw for a touchdown. He's going to
Hmm.
get 11 points. Like there's no like
Yeah.
buffer of like he's going to throw for 300 yards even if he has no touchdowns and he'll at least like have that little bit of
Hmm.
buffer. Like it's going to
He
be
might throw for 190 and rush for 40 yards and call it a day. And
I
that's
mean,
tough.
I think he did that in one of the games that he
He
played
definitely
last
did.
year
He
but he like ran for
100%
two
did.
touchdowns at the same time. So he was like completely fine. Um,
Yeah.
so yeah, there's a lot of booming and busting on this team. When you started talking about Reed and Love, uh, it got me thinking about the idea that, and I know you didn't do this intentionally. You took the best player available, but like you have a Lamar Zay
I
stack
do.
on
I
your
do.
team. And of course, I have a lot of Packers stacking with
You got a
that.
pack. You got a pack of them.
I have a
Come
a
on,
pack of Packers. Is that
come
something you
on.
think about on like you're on like a roster construction basis? I know you're not like aiming for it, but when you look at it and you're like, man, I need some upside this week. Like if I play Zay and Lamar,
Mhm.
like I'm playing for a little more upside, almost like in a best ball kind
It's a
of
little
frame
it's
of
a little
mind.
different with a guy like Lamar just because so much of his success is tied to the rushing. So like it's tough to be invested in their passing game in general, like outside of him.
Mm,
So a guy like if you own Andrews, sure. And if you own Zay, like it's no disrespect to Zay, but there's so much variance in what ends up happening like who ends up scoring in those games. Even if Lamar has a good passing day, he might run in a bunch of touchdowns. Who knows what Gus Edwards might all of a sudden run in touchdowns. Like we've seen it time and again in that offense, like very unpredictable what ends up happening in terms of production. But in general, yeah, I do think that there's something to that. Like, I mean, obviously best ball is kind of a different animal, but like you stack it up because you know that that's how you get the highest ceiling.
mm.
But you got to, the stars kind of have to align.
Right, exactly.
Yeah.
Yeah, so you touched on it a little bit before, but like I asked you what your team's biggest weakness is, and you talked about my team's starting lineup. But from whether it's a one particular position, whether it's like you think about is Pitts really the guy, or whether it's a depth kind of question. I mean, I'm a person who somewhat reluctantly traded away my first this year of something
Hmm.
that I was planning on sort of being able to have at least a little bit of production out of like a guy at the 105, and I sent it
Hmm.
away for a good reason. Um, but what would you be if you're me? What would you be looking at this team like? I'm a little bit worried. I have a hole here, or like, or
I
what
mean,
would
it's
that
it
be?
is it is depth at receiver after those starters. And it's not really that tough. Like there are guys here that like I know you and I like a lot as players, like the Rashad Batemans of the world and Elijah Moore. Like we like these guys for a lot of reasons, but like they're just not really in situations that you expect really big years out of them. And
Mm,
they're worthy of that roster spot, but you're kind of stuck because you own them and you're never going to put them in your lineup and feel great about it. So
right.
that's tough. So if any of those guys go down, or even if you just have like a bad like bye week and just kind of the way it works out, it's a little tough to plug any of these guys in. I mean, Christian Watson, apparently his legs are different sizes. You know, like
Who
that's a
knew?
problem.
I guess that's
That's an
important.
issue. Yeah. I mean, I like Pop Douglas. If that's something. Pop Douglas, last I checked, plays for the Patriots, which is not ideal.
No, that is a team that I think they have the
So,
lowest Vegas
like,
win projection in football. I think it's
yeah.
like 4.5, their win
And like, I
risk.
mean, Jonathan Mingo, like maybe
Oh,
that guy will
oh,
I don't know. I don't know. You got a lot of receivers here, and you can't drop any of them, but you can't start any of them. And that's tough.
those are
That's the
called
one thing.
roster cloggers, is what
Yeah. I
some of those
mean,
guys for sure.
there's four receivers here you feel great about every week, and you don't necessarily need to flex a receiver every week. And if Javante figures it out, we know the guy he is. I think he's really your wild card. Like you want to like that's really what it comes down to. It's like what is the thing that needs to break your way? There's two things that need to break your way this year. Javante needs to come back and be himself, and Kyle Pitts needs to be in the top 8.
That's
I
not
think
exactly
that's
a
it.
high bar for Pitts, so yeah, I'll take
It's
that.
not a high bar. He doesn't need to be ascendant for your team to be proficient, like to be firmly in the playoff discussion and contending.
Mm,
He can't be worse. Like what was he last year? Last year, this says he was tight end 13. That ain't gonna
yeah,
do it,
no, it's
right?
not.
That ain't gonna do it. But if he cracks the top 6, 7, 8, I think you get that consistent double digits from him, which is kind of a lot to ask because of the ups and downs with him. But I think if you get that, and if you can get Javante, even if the news is that he wins the job out, like he just has a decent camp by the end of it. He's secure in having the majority of the touches. I think there's a ton of production there for him. But we know, like, coming back from these injuries last year, he wasn't the same kind of efficient self that we're used to. So he's really your wild card. If he's figured it out by my math, and I'm looking at your roster over here on the side,
Mm.
you got one guy that can go into that flex spot and relieve you, and you don't need to dip into any of those bench guys. Barring health, this is as good of a starting roster as is in this league, except for mine.
Nobody will touch yours. I'm not
But
saying I can touch yours. I would
no, but
never.
I'm
Uh,
I'm serious. And looking at the teams that I ran through, talking about who gives me pause, like this, just if I just like screenshot the part of your team that is the starters, it is as scary, if not scarier, than those. And that's not, I don't like complimenting you any more than anyone else in this
Oh, I
league.
know.
But, and again, you've taken an interesting route, but you're here. And then I horrify myself by scrolling down farther, and I see you still have 3 first-round picks this coming year and 2 second-round picks. And then the next year, you may not have a first, but you have 3 second-round picks.
Sure do.
I mean, you're still net positive on assets, and you traded for Chase. Again, sunk cost. You have lit $200 a year on fire for 3 years, but now you're here. I don't know what more you can really ask for out of a rebuild. You've got,
That's
I mean, and these aren't old guys. The first thing we talked about is I'm trying to walk a line between relevance now and planning for the future.
yeah.
You do not violate the rule of running backs over whatever and wide receivers approaching 30. Like this core is pretty young. It looks good.
Yeah, I mean, I took a
Yeah.
circuitous route to get
Nice.
here.
Good. Good.
A very sort of winding route, but I mean, yeah, there's still picks. There's still picks that I, you know, will be putting on the table at some point probably.
Yeah.
But like, like you said, yeah, there's the balance of like the old productive guy versus like the young guys or whatever, right? I have just taken the strategy of just like fuck all the old guys, just all the age, give me all the ageism that I can like possibly get. And there could be problems with that strategy because there, as I kind of found out this summer, like there are kind of only X number of like young on the market assets that you
Sure.
can like obtain. It doesn't matter
Sure.
at certain point how many picks you have. Obviously you're not overpaying like outside of what's reasonable,
Hmm.
but if you're putting up like, really strong offers for dudes, like people are not inclined to
It's tough to
just
get those
hand
really
away.
high end
Yeah.
guys. Yeah, for sure. And you had to give the bag for Chase. You sold a tremendous amount of stuff, an amount of stuff that probably only you could have paid, which is important because nobody had that many assets to sell.
Correct. And then it's also like who was I bidding against, perhaps? But
Yeah,
that's like
true.
that makes me feel like one of the like
You're
is
bidding
it the
against yourself.
Sacramento Kings who always are handing out
Yeah.
contracts that are
You
like
were, as
who
it
who are you
turns out,
bidding
bidding
against?
against yourself. They had no other offers. It was just you.
I
But you
mean,
got it.
he's
You got it
there. Yeah,
done.
he's on the team.
He is on your team.
He has a healthy Joe Burrow or Eminem Slim Shady
Eminem, that's right.
in his
Slim
picture.
Shady himself in
Um,
the Queen City.
yeah, and it's not like I'm relying, like you talk about like the deep receivers. I mean, yeah, there's like a lot of guys on this roster that have been sort of the like you mentioned Bateman, and ironically, this is kind of a tangent. Uh, I I didn't I published a tweet today. I don't tweet.
Good
I
for
never
you.
tweet. I tweet maybe
On
3 or 4 times a year.
Incredible. You X'd
Not
it up.
I refer to call I refuse to call it X. Um, the I was responding to a tweet that said, I'm going to quote this for you.
Mm.
Rashad Bateman once again made the play of the day for the Ravens, leaping over 2 defenders in the end zone for a 15-yard touchdown. But
Wow.
Bateman was injured on the play and did not return to take another rep. He stayed on the field holding the left side of his ribs.
Wow.
Um,
Was this
and
dated
then
2022 by any chance?
this is from 6 hours ago, and I
Wow.
responded the complete Bateman experience in a single tweet, and I got a lot of Ravens Twitter that like that. It was like 50 some Ravens fans all
That's
came in
great.
to discuss the perils of Rashad Bateman. Not a guy I'm counting on. I know that like the receiver room, that's a roundabout way of coming to like the receiver room is like a little top heavy, like it's sort
Hmm.
of yeah. Again, it's very
Not much of a
a,
receiver. It's really not. It's
it's
Zay, a bunch of guys, and Bateman's there. And Bateman has that talent. Like we really like the guy. It just hasn't quite clicked. But again,
yeah
he's a guy you can't drop him. And you can't start him. So like you got all these guys that are like, oh, I believe in the talent. Okay. But
yeah.
and then you're kind of stuck.
It's like how long do you believe in the talent, and
Sure.
especially like and it becomes an issue. I know we've talked about this, like you have a million picks and like you increase your odds of hitting on dudes by having
Hmm.
like a ton of picks, and I've been able to
Hmm.
hit on like a few guys,
Hmm.
but the volume of picks means like my roster turnover has to be some at some point like somebody like would get cut off of my team that wouldn't get cut off of nine
Sure.
of the other teams in this
Hmm.
league, probably just because of how much of an infusion that all these freaking picks have netted me, which is of course
Hmm.
part of why I go out and spend 100,000 picks on a Jamar Chase.
Yeah, I mean, I also wouldn't be surprised if we get to midseason, somebody's gotten a couple of injuries and they're kind of out of contention and they're doing a reset and they sell, I'm not selling you Tyreek Hill, but maybe like a Tyreek Hill hits the market because it doesn't make sense for that team to try and compete that year. Like you're in as good a shape as you can be to try and get that high end talent that might be violating your age rule. But if you're one piece away from like legitimately having a shot, like you're in position to do that. And that's a huge advantage. No one's going to be able to give 3 first-round picks right now. I'm not sure anyone else can. At least not anyone that would be buying.
Well, exactly. It's like Shat and Luke like are
Mm-hmm.
the teams that have
And they
first round
could,
picks.
but neither of them are buying for this year. It wouldn't make any sense. They're both acquiring those picks to make those picks, at least in the foreseeable future.
Yeah.
And you've got ammo, a lot of ammo. For a starting roster that good, you have a lot of ammo. So
We'll see
good for
how it
you.
goes.
Good for you, man.
I kind of wish you had shit on me a little bit more. So why don't you go ahead and say just this last sort of question, very open ended. Just
Mm-hmm.
say something terrible about this team. Like
Your team?
really please analyze my team and
Mm.
tell me why I'm not going to beat you.
Mm. Well, quite frankly, you don't have any players that are as good as mine. So there's that. You
That's
know,
brilliant analysis. Really,
there's
the
that.
hard hitting stuff
Well,
on the
I
LOR
mean, we could go
podcast.
position by position here. It's not that tough. You have Bijan, I have McCaffrey. If this is for the next 5 years, I like your chances, but we're in
It's
2024.
not, yeah.
You have ETN, I have Gibbs. That's not that close. Um, Chase is good. Chase is good. I like Chase. I'm not going to say anything bad about Chase. Nico Collins, like I don't know. Maybe I'm going to die on the hill that's like last year was an aberration, but I kind of think last year was an aberration. It's just so replicable. Like he just did so
Uh,
good.
Maybe you view him as another make or break player because that's actually a question on my list, and you kind of answered it with Javante.
Yeah.
But like maybe the two of them together turns in because if either of those two or both sort of either step back in
Well,
Nico's
yeah.
case
I
or
mean,
don't
like
step up in Javante's
you're
case.
coming off a huge like career year for Collins. And there's no reason to believe it can't be continued because that was his quarterback of the future for the rest of his career, theoretically. In his third year, which is not an uncommon time for a receiver to really make a leap. I feel like he's had like a little bit of health issues his first couple of years, like maybe nothing
Yeah.
crazy, but like, on and off the field kind of stuff. Like there's no real reason to believe it can't be replicated, but they bring in Diggs and they're kind of, they're in transition as an offense with a lot of pieces and a lot of guys that are going to want to eat. So you wonder, it's natural to wonder if Nico's going to see the same target volume going forward. He might, but it's not without risk. I think Pickens kind of sucks, but like I'm not sure it's because I think he sucks as a player. He definitely isn't like very athletic, but he's very well, maybe he is, but he just doesn't separate. It's so bizarre. The guy just doesn't really get open, which is bizarre, but
Contested
he's
catch
kind of
artist.
good. I don't know, man. And like what and then we get into the whole debate of like who the fuck is throwing the football.
Mm.
So like, your wide receiver 3 is getting the ball thrown to him either by the corpse of Russell Wilson, who I mean, I'm nervous about. I would be if I were a Steelers fan. Or Justin Fields. Like, I don't know. Like, maybe. So I
Yeah.
mean, there's not without risk. It's not without risk. Jaden Reed also is like a little man. He's a very little man.
He's a good little man though.
He's a good little man. Jaden Reed is 5'11", 187, which is,
Mm.
what, a little bulkier than I thought. We're not quite Devonta Smith, but he's
No.
not exactly a physical force.
Mm.
So, these guys, couple of big hits. Yeah, I don't know. I wouldn't say you're quite made of glass. You physically are made of glass, but your team, I would say somewhere between glass and I don't know, what's a metal that's, maybe like
I
aluminum,
don't know. Yeah, that's
something
pretty
pliable.
pretty
You're maybe
bad.
pliable.
I went to see Deadpool and Wolverine last night, so now
Good for
adamantium was
you.
the first thing that came in my
Yeah,
head when
no,
you
your
said
team is
that.
not made of
It's not
adamantium.
that. No, you're
Your
that's
team is
more.
not made of adamantium. No, 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 no. You're not
No.
even tungsten, bro.
God damn it.
But but you got some good stuff here.
Well, I want to keep these. We definitely went a little longer than I would usually go, but I want
It's
to finish
not
up
short.
with a non-fantasy football related question.
Sure.
Uh, and I guess this could sort of apply to me, but more so for our guy Serms, who is the newest entry into the dad world.
Poor
Give
bastard.
Serms a piece of dadly advice as he enters our club here.
Well, sort of depends on how well his kid sleeps
Mm,
because I'm now on my second child is 2 My first child, my daughter was an incredible sleeper. Everybody was good. She was all the way through the night. She sleep trained like the good obedient child I hoped. And my son is Lucifer. He spent a year and a half ruining my life every chance possible when it came to sleep. And he's kind of figured it out in the last like 3 or 4 months. So, there's a light at the end of the tunnel, but figure out your sleep shit. Figure out a schedule that works for you and works for your wife and works for everybody. But sleep's important. And if you don't get it, you're not gonna feel so good. So figure it out. That would be my first piece of advice. Second piece of advice is they get big a lot faster than you think they will,
Oh my God, so
which is
fast.
which is a little scary because like my daughter's 4, but like she looks like she's 30 and talks like she's 50. Uh, so that happens kind of fast, but it's great. And then the most important one is don't have more until like you're sure you can have more. Like if you think like why wait? Because like I'm not getting any younger. It's just wait.
Very good advice.
Yeah.
Yeah.
We won't be showing my wife
That's
the
had
end of
me.
this podcast. Good news is I don't think she could sit through 30 minutes of fantasy football talk, so she'll never hear that last comment.
I'm not sure if anybody, even in our league, is going to sit through 30 minutes of this podcast,
I
but we
mean,
have we have
we
reached
can
our
hope.
end.
We can hope,
Um,
right?
I think 3 people will reach the end of the video. Maybe I'll be able to
Ah,
see that on the YouTube like metrics or some shit
no, we
like who's
don't we
actually.
don't we don't underestimate the league of record guys. This is a special league. This is good shit.
It sure is.
I think
Well,
three of
thank
them watch.
What I'm gonna like sit, the was it Bird Box, that movie like with the holding the eyes
Yes. Oh
open?
yeah.
I'm gonna
Yeah.
get Rom in a room and I'm gonna hold his eyes
Hold his
open to
eyes.
watch this podcast.
I mean, real question is, you think you can get Rom in a room?
On
Can
that
it be done?
teaser note, with a suspenseful tease for what might be coming on our next
Wow.
podcast,
Wow.
or sometime in the
Is
not
it
too
going to be a
distant
lot?
future.
Is there going to be a live read where he in real time responds to trade offers? Because like I'm in for that. You just tell me when you guys are going to record, and I'll
It's
start barraging him with trade offers.
I'm gonna have to like shut off his account or something.
No, it's good. I like this. This is good.
Well, thank you for taking the time tonight. Thank
Oh,
you for talking about your stupidly dominant team and
thank
my
you.
hopes of someday actually becoming that.
Hey, man,
Um,
this is great. Someone's got to lose in the second round of the playoffs. I love it.
hey, playoffs would
Awesome.
be something for me,
It
man.
would be
Playoffs and like a
something.
couple weekly
Yeah,
highs,
man. Imagine imagine that hundreds number 7 and 8 for this league don't go to waste.
Do you remember last year, the first team you lost to? Do you remember who it was?
I think it was you.
Yeah, it was me.
I think it was
I just
you.
want to make sure that you
I
remember
recall
that.
being just ravaged by bye weeks. Something like that. It was pretty bad.
I didn't go back and look at it because I actually hadn't remembered it until just now.
Yeah. No, it's true though.
But
It's 100% true. You did. And that was pre-chase. So if that can happen, anything can happen.
we'll see. On that note, I'm going to hit stop recording now.
Sounds
Thank
good.
you everybody for listening, and we'll see you next time.
Later, guys.